You know how some people say your past doesn't matter? Yeah, well, they're effing liars. I'm Sabrina, I'm 24, and I just learned the hard way that guys absolutely care about your body count, no matter what those feminist blogs tell you. So there I was in December, working my boring office job, when I met Sam through mutual friends at this house party. And let me tell you, this man was everything. Tall, good job in the financial sector, actually had his shit together, unlike the string of losers I'd been with before. From the moment we started talking, I knew he was different. He was the kind of guy who opened doors, remembered things I said, and actually wanted to introduce me to his family. Wife material shit, you know? The chemistry was insane. Like we couldn't keep our hands off each other, but it wasn't just physical. He'd text me good morning every day, bring me coffee when I had early shifts, and actually listened when I talked about my day. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was with someone who genuinely cared about me as a person, not just what I could give them. But here's where it gets tricky. Sam was innocent. Not like virgin innocent, but he'd only been with 3 girls, including me. 3. Meanwhile, I'd been around the block more times than the ice cream truck, if you catch my drift. We're talking double digits. And not the low double digits either. Look, I'm not proud of it, but I went through a phase in college and after where I thought I was being empowered or whatever, turned out I was just being stupid. The whole time we were getting closer, I kept thinking about when to tell him. Every time the topic of past relationships came up, I'd deflect or give vague answers. Oh, I've dated around, or I had some fun in college, you know how it is. But I could see in his eyes that he assumed I was more like him. Someone who'd had a few meaningful relationships, not someone who'd hooked up with random guys at parties more times than I could count on both hands. I told myself I was protecting him, protecting us. Why ruin something perfect with details that didn't matter anymore? I wasn't that person now. I was with Sam. And that's all that should count, right? But deep down, I knew I was being a coward. I knew if he really knew everything, it might change how he saw me. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. Those first few weeks were like living in a fairy tale. He'd surprise me with little dates. We'd spend entire weekends just talking and watching movies, and I felt genuinely happy for the first time in years. I even started picturing a future with him, meeting his parents, moving in together, maybe even getting married someday. Everything I'd always wanted but never thought I deserved was right there in front of me. The sex was incredible too, but different from what I was used to. With Sam, it felt intimate and meaningful, not just physical. He'd hold me afterwards and we'd talk about everything and nothing. I'd never experienced that kind of connection before, and it made me realize how empty all those other encounters had been. But it also made me more terrified of losing him. By New Year's, we were practically inseparable. Sam had already started talking about taking a trip together in the spring, and I was melting. This was it. This was the relationship I'd been searching for through all those meaningless hookups. I thought I'd finally found my person, someone who saw me as more than just a good time. But I was living on borrowed time, and I knew it. Every day that passed without telling him the truth felt like another lie I was building our relationship on. But honestly, I was terrified. What we had was so perfect, so pure. Sam looked at me like I was precious, like I was someone worth protecting and cherishing. How could I tell him that before him I'd let guys treat me like I was disposable? That I'd given away what he valued so easily to people who didn't even remember my name the next day? I convinced myself that my past didn't define me, that what mattered was who I was with him. God, I was so fucking naive. The beginning of January came way too fast. We were lying in bed one Sunday morning, just talking about random stuff, when Sam brought up his ex-girlfriend. He mentioned how they'd waited 3 months before sleeping together because they both wanted it to be special. The way he talked about it with such reverence and respect made my stomach drop. "What about you?" he asked, tracing patterns on my arm. "How long did you usually wait with your exes?" I should have told him the truth right then. Instead, I gave him some bullshit answer about how it depended on the relationship, how I'd learned to value emotional connection over physical attraction. All true, technically, but not the whole story. Not even close. But Sam wasn't stupid. He started asking more specific questions over the next few days. How many serious relationships had I been in? Did I believe in waiting? What were my views on casual hookups? Each question felt like a trap, and I kept giving these carefully crafted half-truths that painted me as someone I'd never actually been. The worst part? I could see him falling deeper for this version of me that didn't really exist. He'd tell his friends about how different I was, how I wasn't like other girls who just hooked up with random guys. He'd brag about how I had standards, how I was the kind of girl you marry, not just mess around with. Every compliment felt like a knife twisting in my chest because I knew it was all based on a lie. Then came that Friday night that changed everything. We were at his friend Tyler's place with a group of people, just hanging out and drinking. Someone started playing this stupid game where you had to guess people's body counts. I tried to steer the conversation away, but Sam actually seemed interested. He was laughing and making jokes about how everyone was probably lying anyway. "What about you, Sam?" Tyler asked. "You're pretty secretive about your dating history." Sam shrugged, not embarrassed at all. "3, including Sabrina. I'm not really into the whole casual thing." Everyone nodded like that was respectable, which it was. Then Tyler turned to me with this smirk. "Your turn, Sabrina. Let's see if you two are compatible in the numbers department." I felt like I was going to throw up. Every eye in the room was on me, including Sam's. He was smiling, probably expecting me to say something similar to his number, maybe 4 or 5 at most. Instead, I just sat there frozen, my face probably giving away everything. "Come on," someone else chimed in. "It can't be that bad." That's when Sam's expression started to change. The smile faded as he really looked at me, probably seeing the panic I was trying so hard to hide. "Hey, you don't have to answer if you don't want to," he said quietly, but I could hear the concern in his voice. But Tyler wasn't letting it go. "Oh shit, it's higher than we thought, isn't it?" "Don't worry, Sabrina, we're not judging. This is 2024 after all." I wanted to disappear. I mumbled something about it being personal and tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. Sam was quiet for the rest of the night, and I could feel him pulling away even as we sat next to each other on the couch. The ride home was silent, except for the radio. And when he dropped me off, he just gave me a quick kiss goodnight instead of coming up like he usually did. I knew I was fucked. The next morning, Sam texted asking if we could talk. Not, "Good morning, beautiful," or "Miss you already" like usual. Just, "Can we talk?" Those 3 words made my heart sink because I knew exactly what this was about. He came over that afternoon, looking like he hadn't slept. We sat on my couch, and there was this awful tension between us that had never been there before. Sam wasn't even really looking at me when he started talking. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," he said. "How many people have you been with?" I could have lied, I should have lied, but something about the way he was looking at me, like he already knew and was just giving me a chance to come clean, made me crack. So I told him. Not the exact number, even I wasn't completely sure of that, but I told him it was in the double digits, significantly higher than his 3. You should have seen his face. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like disappointment? Hurt? Like I'd just told him something that fundamentally changed how he saw me. He sat there for a long time not saying anything, just staring at his hands. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he finally asked. I went into damage control mode, explaining how it was all in the past, how none of it meant anything, how I was a different person now. I told him about how college was a confusing time, how I'd made mistakes but learned from them, how what we had was real and special and nothing like anything I'd experienced before. All of that was true, by the way, every word, but I could see it wasn't landing the way I needed it to. I need some time to think," he said, standing up. "This isn't what I thought we were." After he left, I spent the rest of the weekend crying and texting him paragraphs about how sorry I was for not being upfront. I told him I loved him, which I did, desperately, and begged him not to let my past ruin our future. I promised I would never hide anything from him again. By Monday night, he texted back saying he wanted to try to work through it. I was so fucking relieved, I literally started crying happy tears. I thought we'd gotten past the worst of it. I thought if he was willing to give us another chance, everything would go back to normal. God, I was so wrong. Things were different after that. Sam said he forgave me, said he understood that the past was the past, but his actions told a completely different story. The way he looked at me changed. The easy intimacy we'd had before felt forced now, like he was going through the motions, but his heart wasn't in it. He started asking weird questions about my past. Not directly, but he'd make these comments about girls who gave it up too easily, or how he respected women who valued themselves. Each comment felt like a dig at me, even though he swore he wasn't trying to make me feel bad. The worst part was how he started treating me during sex. Before, he'd been so gentle and loving, like he was making love to someone precious. Now it felt mechanical, almost cold. He'd finish and roll over without the cuddling and talking we used to do. When I tried to bring it up, he'd say he was just tired or stressed about work. I started overcompensating like crazy. I'd cook his favorite meals, surprise him at work with lunch, do everything I could think of to prove that I was girlfriend material despite my past. I even started hinting about meeting his parents, thinking that if he introduced me to his family, it would prove he was serious about us. But Sam kept making excuses. It's not the right time, or they're really busy with work stuff. Meanwhile, he'd told me all about how he'd introduced his last girlfriend to them after just 2 months. We were going on 3 months, and apparently I wasn't worth a family dinner. By March, our relationship had become this toxic cycle where Sam would be cold and distant for days, then suddenly affectionate when he wanted sex. I was walking on eggshells constantly, terrified that any little thing would remind him of my past and set him off again. The cruel jokes started around this time. Little comments about experienced girls or how some women just can't help themselves. He'd say them with this smile, like they were playful teasing. But they cut deep every single time. When I'd tell him it hurt my feelings, he'd say I was being too sensitive, or that I needed to learn to laugh at myself. If you can't handle a few jokes about your past, maybe you shouldn't have created that past in the first place, he said once. That comment kept me up for nights. I started changing everything about myself to try to win him back. I bought more conservative clothes, stopped going out with friends who knew about my history, even considered lying to people about my past if they asked. I was so desperate to become the kind of girl Sam could be proud of that I completely lost sight of who I actually was. But nothing I did was enough. Sam had mentally categorized me as not wife material. And every day he seemed to find new evidence to support that theory. When I'd text him during the day, he'd accuse me of being needy. When I'd try to plan dates, he'd say I was being pushy. When I'd attempt to have serious conversations about our future, he'd shut me down by saying I was moving too fast. The sex became purely transactional. Sam would come over late at night when he was horny, fuck me without much foreplay or intimacy, then leave shortly after. But during the day, he'd barely text me back or make time to actually spend together. I felt like I was being used, but every time I brought it up, he'd gaslight me. I thought you were experienced, he'd say with this nasty edge to his voice. I figured this is what you're used to. It was like he was punishing me for my past by treating me exactly like all those guys who'd used me before him. The irony wasn't lost on me, but pointing it out only made him angrier. The final straw came in early April. We'd been together for 4 months at that point, though it barely felt like a relationship anymore. Sam came over one Friday night, clearly expecting to hook up, but when I tried to talk to him about us first, he exploded. What is there to talk about, Sabrina? You know what this is? What do you mean, what this is? I asked, genuinely confused. He looked at me like I was stupid. Did you really think this was going somewhere serious? After everything? That's when he said it. The words that completely destroyed me. You're not wife material. You never were. Girls like you. You're fun for a while, but you're not the kind of girl guys marry. I started crying. Ugly, desperate crying. Begging him to take it back, telling him I loved him and asking how he could be so cruel. His response was to call me pathetic and tell me to stop embarrassing myself. You knew what you were when we met, he said coldly. Don't act surprised that I see you the same way everyone else does. He left that night, and I knew it was over. But somehow, I still thought he'd come back. I thought maybe if I gave him space, he'd miss me and realize he'd made a mistake. Instead, I found out 3 weeks later that he was already seeing someone else. A girl from his work who'd only been with one guy before him. Someone pure enough for him to introduce to his family after just 1 month of dating. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but my humiliation was far from over. See, what I didn't know was that Sam had been sharing details about our relationship and my past with his friends throughout our entire time together. Tyler and the rest of his crew knew everything about my body count, about how Sam felt trapped with me, about how he was just waiting for the right moment to find someone better. It all came crashing down when I made the mistake of posting about my heartbreak on Reddit. I was anonymous, but I shared enough details about our relationship that Sam recognized the story immediately. Instead of just letting it go, he decided to correct the record by sharing our entire private conversation history with his friend group. Screenshots of my desperate texts after he broke up with me. Voice messages where I was crying and begging him to give us another chance. Even intimate photos I'd sent him during our relationship. All of it got shared around his social circle, like I was some kind of joke. But the worst part was what they did with it next. Someone in his group knew people at my work, and suddenly everyone in my office knew about my situation. They didn't have details, but they knew enough to treat me differently. Colleagues who used to be friendly started keeping their distance. My boss, who'd always been professional but warm, started treating me with this subtle disapproval that made my stomach turn. Then the Reddit post went viral in the worst possible way. Even though I tried to make Sam look bad in my original post, the comments were brutal. Thousands of people calling me exactly what Sam had called me: pathetic, desperate, and definitely not wife material. The post got shared on other platforms with my username attached, and suddenly my entire romantic history was being discussed by strangers who thought I deserved everything I got. The final blow came when I found out Sam's new girlfriend, Hannah, had seen everything. Not only had she seen it, but she'd apparently laughed about it with their friends. Sam had shown her my photos, my desperate messages, everything. To them, I was just this cautionary tale about what happens when you try to turn a slut into a housewife. I tried to get the photos taken down, but they were already out there. I tried to get my Reddit post deleted, but it had been saved and reposted too many times. My humiliation was permanent, searchable, and attached to my real name thanks to Sam's friends doing some internet detective work. Within 2 months of our breakup, I'd lost not just Sam but my reputation, my job prospects, and most of my social circle. People who'd known me for years started treating me like I was contagious, like whatever desperation they'd seen in those messages might rub off on them. And Sam? He got engaged to Hannah 6 months later. 6 months. This girl he'd met while he was still treating me like his personal sex toy was now wearing his ring and planning their wedding. She got everything I'd wanted: his family's approval, his respect, his commitment, all because she'd had the good sense to keep her legs closed before meeting him. The worst part is that I can't even blame him anymore. He never lied to me about what he wanted. I just convinced myself that I could change his mind, that love would be enough to overcome my past. But some stains don't wash out, no matter how hard you scrub. I'm 25 now, and I'm still dealing with the fallout from those 4 months with Sam. My reputation in this city is basically destroyed. Guys I meet somehow always find out about my history through mutual connections, and the cycle starts all over again. I'm either the girl they want to fuck but not date, or the girl they avoid entirely because they've heard I'm difficult. I've thought about moving somewhere new, starting fresh where nobody knows my story. But honestly, I'm tired of running from the consequences of my choices. This is my life now. The life I built with every random hookup. Every night I chose temporary validation over long-term respect. Sam married Hannah last month. I saw the photos on Facebook because apparently I'm still enough of a masochist to follow his public accounts. She looked beautiful and pure and everything I never was. He looked happier than I'd ever seen him, like a man who'd found exactly what he was looking for. And me? I'm still here, Still single, still dealing with the reputation I created for myself, one bad decision at a time. Still wondering if I'll ever find someone who can see past my numbers, or if I'm destined to be the cautionary tale that other women learn from. But here's what really gets me. I'm supposed to feel sorry for my choices, right? I'm supposed to be this broken, regretful woman who warns other girls not to make my mistakes. Except, I don't feel sorry, not anymore. Yes, I lost Sam. Yes, my reputation is shot. Yes, I'm probably going to be alone for a long time. But you know what? Fuck everyone who thinks my worth as a human being is determined by how many people I've slept with. Fuck Sam for making me feel like I needed to apologize for having a past. And fuck this whole system that tells women we're damaged goods if we dare to explore our sexuality before finding the one. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life groveling for forgiveness from men who probably weren't worth my time anyway. If my body count makes me unmarriageable, then maybe marriage to those kinds of men isn't worth having. Sam can have his pure little wife and his perfect suburban life. I'll figure out my own path, even if it means being alone. At least I'll be alone on my own terms, not because I'm desperately trying to become someone else's version of acceptable. The truth is, I'd rather be single forever than spend another day apologizing for who I used to be.